Okay. My name is Derek Walker. Presently employed with Gooding County Sheriff's Office here in South Central Idaho. Presently assigned to running the Narcotics Division with Gooding County. I was born and raised in South Central Idaho in a little town called Buhl. Came from a family of four. Me and my mother, father, my little brother, and me. Came from a blue-collar family. My old man was, dad was, worked in concrete his whole life. My mom, variety of jobs. Worked in the fish industry. She worked for some large corporations like Target and Sears and stuff like that. The little brother, he ended up moving, and he now is presently working for the United States Postal Service. As far as my upbringing, like I said, blue collar. My family was always into sports. So as growing up, I always played sports, football, baseball, basketball. In the winter months, my grandmother would always take us bowling, stuff like that. I can't say a whole bunch about my childhood because it was great. You know, we had the quintessential, in the summer months, we were always on our bicycles out playing around. We were always doing sports. Mom and Dad were always there for us. They always worked hard and gave us whatever we needed. So I don't have any complaints about the childhood. Went to elementary, junior high, high school there in Buhl. Very, very, uneventful as a child. Played the sports, did that thing. Didn't really think of a career choice you had talked about, when did you know you were going to be a cop, stuff like that. I tested my freshman year in high school about, I don't know what test it is, but it kind of places you on what you could be good at. Law enforcement and firefighter came up on mine. I don't know what test it was, though. Things kind of got into high school. Things kind of got kicked around. I don't know if you knew this or not. I ended up being a dad when I was 16. Ended up getting married when I was 16. So I did not get the opportunity, or I did not graduate from high school like everybody else did. I had to come back 3 years later and take night classes. I didn't get my GED. I got my regular diploma. I came back and got my regular high school diploma after that. After high school, didn't really have too many job options. I didn't want to, college really wasn't my thing. I wasn't a really good student. I was more of a sports, and then all of a sudden it's over and you're sitting there wondering, hey, what am I going to do now? So I ended up working a variety of jobs, from building house packages for a truss company, working in the fish industry. I did the fish industry from when I was 14 till 20, something like that, for Clear Springs Truck Company. That was a fairly interesting job. Worked for Big O Tires, busted tires for a living. Just blue-collar jobs is what it was for the most part. Then we moved in, me and my wife at the time, moved into a house there in Buhl, and my next door neighbor was in law enforcement. He worked for Buhl PD, and I'd known him for a while. It's the town I grew up in there was only 3,000 people growing up. We had one stoplight in the entire town. Very, very small community. So we got to having a few beers together one night, and we'd always, Fridays, Saturdays, have a few beers. Hey, how's things going? Whenever we had time, and he started talking about it and talking about law enforcement, and I was kind of interested. I kind of wanted to get into the field. But I didn't know anything about it. And then he just says, hey, you want to do a ride along? And I went and rode along with him once. And at that time, BOPD was in the transition of chief of polices and stuff like that. The new chief came in and started a reserve program. So another buddy of mine, after the ride along, we decided, hey, this is pretty cool. We got to see the the team building aspect of law enforcement, how much of a brotherhood it is or a sisterhood or whatever you want to call it. Everybody was, it was like a family for everybody. And we really liked that, and we decided, oh, let's give it a try and do the reserve thing. And so we got the gear, and we started riding along and taking the classes and doing the stuff we were supposed to get done. And then the bug bit us both, me and my other buddy that jumped in, and we decided to go a step further and take our Level 1 Reserve Academy, which is, I don't know, it's about half the time as regular post. When you go to post in Idaho, you have to do, I believe, 300 and some odd hours of training. It's 10 weeks or 12 weeks or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it is. This was 180 hours of training for the Level 1 Reserves, which means you could cover shift, you could do the same thing as a regular patrolman did, but you just had to have somebody on duty with you. So we went that route. Both of us graduated, and we started covering shifts for BOPD. Very uneventful. BOPD, Buhl's a small town, not a lot went on. Bar fights, the same as every other patrolman gets into when you're working patrol, working traffic, DUIs, bar fights, that kind of thing. Then Buhl changed chiefs again after a couple years. Once they changed administrations, we didn't get the ride time, or we didn't get the patrol time that we wanted, and they were kind of phasing out the reserve program. I then decided, you know what, it's time to go somewhere else. I like law enforcement. I want to continue down that path. I applied for Gooding County, and I applied for Gooding County and Twin Falls County Sheriff's Office, both in the jail. And Gooding County offered me the job first.
So Derek, before you start talking about that, when did you start with Buhl PD as a reserve officer?
95, I believe. 94, 95, somewhere around in there.
Okay. And so you said that you had basically essentially 180 hours of training at the time. As you switched departments, or maybe as you went along with your career, what type of training did you receive? Did you actually ever have to formally go to post? And if you did, what did post entail? How much training did that have?
As the Level 1 Reserve Academy, no, we didn't. We went to you would call it post, but what they did was it's for reserves. And so it wasn't like Idaho Post. When you go for full-time patrol, you'll go to Boise or CSI, College of Southern Idaho. They actually have scripted programs there at their facilities. Idaho Post is for training in law enforcement. The way we did it was Twin Falls County Sheriff's Office decided to put on a Level 1 Reserve Academy. They did it, and they brought their own instructors into their facility. So yes, it was post certified. It was all ready to go, but it wasn't at their post facilities.
And so, what kind of training did they
do? Patrol procedures. Law week. Every patrolman's got to go through the law week. So do detention officers, where they teach you about law. Patrol procedures, crash investigations, drug ID, drug investigations, the whole gamut of what you'll do, crash investigations. They give you the basic knowledge, 320, 360 hours of just a basic rudimentary package of what it takes to be a patrolman. Just report writing. We had 8 hours of report writing. That's it. It's not a lot. What else is there that it's just the gamut is just courtroom testimony.
How about any firearms training?
Yeah, we took 1 week of firearms training, 1 week of EVOC training.
Which is what?
Emergency vehicle operations course. You got to run the car around the racetrack. They taught you how to shuffle steer and how your driving patterns and how to be safe, and radio procedures when you're calling out traffic stops. How not to get the microphone hung up in the steering wheel when you're when you're driving down the road. just a gamut of just a basic patrol package. That's all you're getting. And then once you go to your patrol agency or your agency that you're hired with, then you'll start your FTO packet, your field training. You'll be in field training at that point, and then they'll progress your training after that. Go a little further with your training on how that specific agency wants their traffic stops to be conducted, their interviews to be conducted, their more or less their reports, how they want, because most agencies have when you write a report, they have a template of how they want it done. It all says the same thing when you're writing your report. You're putting in the information. They just want it in a specific format.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And so you went from Buhl PD to Gooding County Sheriff, I think
Yes.
you said?
Yep.
Okay, and then what happened?
I got hired on as a detention officer, worked in the jail, safeguarded the inmates, fed them, made sure the jail was clean, got them to court on time. Every aspect of booking them into the jail when criminal charges were filed on them. PC probable cause arrests were made when the courts sentenced them. We would house the inmates at the Gooding County Sheriff's Office. So I was there about, I want to say approximately 6 months. And this was, I think I was Sheriff Goff's second employee hired. First or second employee hired when he took office. New employee. When he took office, I came on right after that. He might, I don't remember how many it was, but I came on as a patrolman or as a detention officer, worked there for about 6 months. They sent me to the academy. While I was at the academy during arrest techniques, I shattered 3 or 4 bones in my wrist. And I had to get a cast up to here, so I couldn't finish the detention academy. So they sent me home and I worked light duty inside the jail. It wasn't another, and I was just filling out paperwork and doing odd jobs, getting commissary, feeding them dinner. I didn't have any physical interactions, patting them down, doing any searches, doing any cell searches or anything like that. About a month after that, they had a patrol position come open another deputy off the road had transitioned or lateral transferred over to another agency. And Sheriff Goff asked me to apply for the position. I applied, and there was 3 or 4 other people inside the jail facility. Went through the testing process. Once I got it, I was offered the position. I immediately jumped on the spot to go to the road. Went home that night, cut my cast off, and onward and upward. My very first patrol car was a Buick. Is it a Century? I think it was a Buick. It was just what a piece of shit. Oh my God, what a terrible car. I think they rented their cars from Avis at the time. At one point, Gooding County had some real monetary issues, and they were renting their cars from a rental company, their squad cars, and putting the old bubble lights on it. Oh my God, it was terrible. I still remember handwriting accident reports and handwriting probable cause affidavits. We didn't have a computer for the deputies for about the first 2 months I was on patrol. Oh, what a nightmare. Oh, what a pain. And then we ended up getting some computers from, God, where did we get them from? I think BLM had some old cycled out crap computers, and we ended up getting one for patrol and one for the jail, and we were able to, we didn't have a CAD system. Most agencies have a CAD where they can put their evidence and their reports and their names and so everyone can look at the reports and know what's going on with the case. We didn't have that. We just wrote everything in Word and put it in a case file and shipped it off. It was pretty old school. And then we were able to get some more stuff after that. Gooding County finally got the money together and were able to buy some computers. And so shortly after I get hired on the road, it might have been a year, I ended up going to Patrol Academy. Once I hit the Patrol Academy, took my training, the same as I talked to. It was the just like the level 1 reserve academy I'd taken with BOPD, but it was double the time, double the hours. So instead of having 4 hours of report writing in the level 1 reserve academy, I got 8 hours. And instead of 2 days of firearms in the level 1 reserve, I got 5 days in the post academy. So it was just double the training hours and double the training that you got for that stuff. Tested fairly well on that. Came back to Gooding County once I got done with my patrol certification. Went on the road. Fairly uneventful. It wasn't, DUIs, crashes, working narcotics. At that time, Gooding County had a little bit of an issue. It was starting to crop up of a lot of cocaine coming off the dairies, because Gooding County is primarily south of Gooding. On the southern end of Gooding County, it's primarily dairies, and fairly large dairies at that, that have a Hispanic work base, and that's probably 99% Hispanic work base. And we had a little bit of a problem with, we just started seeing the methamphetamines kick in, but we had primarily a lot of cocaine coming off the dairies, and I started working narcotics there, just off as a patrolman, asking for consent, just doing the basics that a patrolman could do at that point. I didn't have any contacts with DEA, I didn't have ATF, I didn't have any of those contacts with Idaho State Police or anybody else to forward a case. So once it hit that point of a narcotics arrest, that's where it stayed. We'd go to court on that. And so I did that for about, and I don't know the exact amount of time, it was less than 2 years. I worked on patrol. The detective at the time for Gooding County lateral transferred to another agency, and they offered me the detective slot. And at the time, the detective was working general crimes. And that had to have been in, so 97 with Gooding County, right around 2000 is when I took the promotion to a detective. I worked general crimes for about the first 6 months, and everything started gravitating, started pushing towards the narcotics end of it, just because that was all the cases I was working.
When you got promoted to detective, did you have to go through any specialized training, or you just kind of got thrown into it?
Got thrown into it at the beginning because there was some detective training out there, but it wasn't within the realm of Gooding County to spend it in their budget to send me to that kind of training, because it was all expensive, and there really wasn't at that point, and it's hard to believe that in 2000 there was really not a lot of training for detectives, and there wasn't. It was fairly sparse. It was all geared towards patrol. There was a few narcotics classes here and there. So I got not thrown in, I took the promotion to that position. I got the training later. Once we started, forfeiture started kicking in off of narcotics cases and stuff like that, we were able to afford to send me to some trainings.
So what type of trainings, once you could afford them, what type of trainings did you attend?
Interview and interrogation, and it's not just the basic 8-hour you got in, patrol academy. It was a week of, there was body language, there was specific aspects of verbal cues, body cues, physical cues that you got during the interview and interrogation classes, basic evidence collection, basic homicide scene, photography. I went to 3 or 4 homicide or photography school because I really liked photography at the time. I still do, but went to some of those schools, basic homicide investigations, crime scene investigations. I did a few internal investigation schools because I got earlier, well, it was later, not in the early 2000s when I got promoted, it was later. I ended up doing quite a few internal investigations for outside agencies, because when one agency has an internal, they have to farm it out to another agency because they can't investigate their own people. Well, they shouldn't investigate their own people. And Sheriff Goff kind of picked me to farm me out to do outside internals for other agencies.
And so when you say outside internals, can you kind of explain what internals are and what are they?
So internal investigations are civil in nature. They're not criminal. They're a deputy screws up, breaks a policy within their own agency. What would it be? We've had unauthorized contact with an inmate, failing to do jail procedures correctly. Failure to book an inmate correctly, failure to do jail checks correctly. Every half hour, the inmates have to be checked on no matter what. Failure to follow that policy, misuse of the phones. From top to bottom, if it's within the policy manual and they violate something within that policy manual, they'll call an outside agency in to say, hey, we're not going to invest this individual because we want to keep the integrity of the case. And it looks, if your own agency investigates you and it looks other than ethical that you're investigating your own people, both to the person that's being investigated and to the public.
So when you did those investigations, those internals, was there ever a time where you looked at anything serious that somebody had done?
That I got called in on 3 in-custody deaths.
And what did those entail? What does that mean?
Those individuals, we had, 2 in-custody deaths. The inmate died in custody while at the jail.
Okay.
So I was called in to find out if there was any policies broke during that incident on why an inmate would have passed away or died in the facility.
Okay. So you initially start with, and you correct me if I'm wrong, initially start with kind of some internal stuff. You're doing general investigations. Are you do you progress to doing homicides, narcotics, and everything else, or is it kind of a catch-all and you're just, whatever's thrown at you?
Yes, it's a catch-all. You catch burglaries, sex crimes, crimes against children, violent crimes against people, homicides, narcotics. Gooding County is a very small county. We only have 15,000 people in the entire county. So one detective could do it. Well, at that point, one detective could do it because there wasn't that many crimes. That much crime was being reported to us. Later on, yes, it kicked into high gear with sex crimes, narcotics, homicides, major crimes. Then you have the scams and stuff like that, but that was later down the road. When I first started, one detective could easily handle all the basic general crimes when I first started.
Was there a specific crime that you would typically handle more than others when you first started as a detective?
Oh, absolutely 100% burglaries. Dope was at high speed in Gooding County. There was no quit in it. And with narcotics comes burglaries, just like in any other jurisdiction within the country. When there's drugs involved, burglaries, everything kicks, domestic violence cases, sex crimes cases, crimes against persons, violent crimes against persons, all kick into high gear. And so we were not chasing our tail, but we were investigating them as much as we could investigate them. But we've kind of found the root cause was, let's go after the narcotics. Let's get these guys pushed around to where they can't stay in one place long enough to go steal anything anymore. And that's where the narcotics program kicked off and where we centralized one narcotics detective, and that ended up being me.
Did there come a point where it branched out for more detectives than just you, or you were just the main detective and then your patrol guys would help out if it got to the point where you needed extra help?
Yes, it did branch out, it's hard for me to remember the order. So in 2001, I believe it was, I started arresting guys from Twin Falls County. Twin Falls County guys, my Gooding County guys were getting arrested in Twin Falls County. Twin Falls County guys were getting arrested in Gooding County. So we started seeing the pattern that there's no jurisdiction on where you get your dope, where you grow your marijuana, where you sell your meth or your cocaine or whatever drug your drug of choice is. There's no borders to it. So I ended up contacting Gerald Gibbs at the time, Sam, and we were able to kind of put together a small task force. It was just me, her, and another detective from Twin Falls County. And I can't remember I think it was Jerry Martinez who just passed here the other day, last month as a matter of fact. It was us three on the task force. Nope, I take that back, it was Kelly Hassani. Kelly. And we were all three very undereducated for tackling. We didn't know how to do buys. We didn't know how to conduct narcotics investigations. We didn't have the savvy. Sam came from a background of sex crimes, so she absolutely knew that backwards and forwards. She was arresting 100 to 150 people a year, no problem, and that's a guess. I think that's a low guess at best. Kelly came from a patrol and a general investigations, and that's where I kind of came from. I was leaning more towards narcotics, but I still wasn't that educated in it. And neither was Kelly, and so we were kind of, the first year and a half, we were kind of stumbling and just kind of trying to find our way through it. And we made a few arrests, a few good asset forfeiture cases, a few big pinches here and there. Then I don't remember if they put another task force officer on over in Twin or if Kelly left, I don't remember. But then we picked up a guy by the name of Jerry Martinez. He jumped on board with us. He was pretty good, and he was bilingual, so he could do, when we were doing the cases off the dairies and stuff like that, he could always translate for us. Then the task force kind of kicked off, and I kind of stayed with general crimes, but the general crimes we kind of looked at it. General crimes were going down the more narcotics we were seizing, the less burglaries. We didn't stomp out the burglaries or get rid of the burglaries, they just lessened. Because I think we were getting the individuals that were moving the dope and using and everything else, we were kind of putting a damper on the burglaries. Sex crimes were still few and far between for the most part. It wasn't until a couple years later, after the task force was implemented, that we had to actually hire a sex crimes investigator, because it all of a sudden spiked within a year and a half, 2 years, it spiked. We were times 10 getting the cases and it stayed that way ever since. We're doubling our cases just about every year.
And why do you think that is? Is it population or what?
I think it's twofold: population, and I think part of it's education. Hey, if this stuff happens to, and that when I mean education for potential victims of, we put it out there, we put pamphlets out there. We never did one. Gooding County never did a PSA, but there was some agencies that did PSAs on, hey, if this happens to you, please report it. Don't be silent. Come forward. We ended up getting a lot of that. I think it was more education, and I think it was people weren't putting up with it as much as they did. It wasn't just a hiding it or I'll get through this kind of a deal, being tough about it and not talking about it. I think it was just, it came forward a lot more. And that's speculation on my part. I can't say that's what it was, but I think that was probably one of the root, not a problem, but the root reason why people started reporting it.
And how about the narcotics? Did you, at any point, I'm assuming you started to see maybe an uptick in the types of cases, the quantity of cases that you were doing for narcotics? Is that true, and do you think that was population-based, or what do you think the reason for that was?
Well, it wasn't population. I don't think it was population-driven. I think it was that nobody had looked at it. I think that's the problem. Nobody had, you might catch a few narcotics cases here and there on patrol side, but until you put someone in narcotics and you start asking, you get detectives asking specific narcotics questions, and you start developing confidential sources, and these people are telling you, and you start writing reports on it, pretty soon instead of going at the precursor of it, you didn't have anybody asking any questions about drugs. You didn't have anybody working the drugs. You didn't have anybody moving up the chain. You didn't have anybody going after the dealer instead of just the user. So nobody asked the question, so you didn't see it, right? If you don't ask about it, then it didn't happen. I don't think that was an administrative thing. I just think we just didn't ask because we didn't know. We weren't educated on it. We chose not to educate ourselves on that. Once we got the task force, and that first year, I bet I did close to 200 interviews. At minimum, I did I know I did 200 interviews because we just started off with, hey, we're going to talk to people inside the jail. Because when we first started, we had no sources. We had nobody to go to. We had nobody to talk to. So we went to people in jail, started kind of on some basic marijuana, some basic meth cases. We started cutting deals with guys. Hey, give us some information. Get the prosecutor on board. Let's get him in here. Let's get him talking. And pretty soon we started getting the intel that, oh, this guy's slinging dope. This guy's moving dope. Oh, this guy's moving coke. This guy's moving heroin. Oh, this guy's got a marijuana grow. And so our cases slowly started creeping up to where we were tripling, quadrupling our cases within a year, pretty easily without even breaking a sweat, just by asking questions.
Were there any interesting cases that happened back then? I mean, obviously you're still active right now. Is there anything that you worked on back then that you found interesting?
There was two highly interesting cases, and one of them I had nothing to do with. I was on the outer periphery of it was a human trafficking case, and state police worked it, and it was awesome. It was a human trafficking, and I'll let you do the interview with those guys if you choose to do the interview with those guys. They sent a lot of people to prison for a long time on that one, and it was pretty heinous. But and then I had the opportunity to work with you on a marijuana cultivation case in the city, or just north of the city limits of Buhl. I had a confidential informant who we had previously hit this informant with. Well, it was kind of funny. This informant, he was about 5'6", and he wasn't a informant at the time, but we had targeted him as a person moving a lot of narcotics. And so we do a traffic stop on him one night, and me and another, he's actually one of the jail commanders in Twin Falls County now. We do a traffic stop on him, and we pull him out of the car. We're talking to him, seeing what's going on, and the deputy that's with me looks down at his feet, and he's got shoes on that are like 5 sizes too big. They stick out. They're like this guy wore a size like a 7 shoe, and the shoes were like a 16. And we're like, what the hell is that? We make him kick off his boots. He's got 2 ounces of dope shoved in the toes of each boot. So we end up hitting him, and he ends up going to jail. He flips, and he ends up taking us to Elmore County, and we end up doing, I believe, 7 pounds of meth just on a cold call out of Boise. And the Boise bad guys meet us halfway into Elmore County. And I jump on board with their narcotics team, and everybody goes to jail. It was a really good case on that one. But then we used that same source and actually I got a cold call from the source on this one. The source had been to a residence in Buhl, and I was familiar with the house in Buhl. I didn't know who lived there, but I was familiar with the house because I grew up there. And the source had told me, hey, walked up to the house. I was gonna cut all these guys' trees. I'm a tree trimmer, and I could smell the weed. And all right, let's go. And so we I get with Sam and Jerry, and you haven't come into play yet. We kind of hatch a plan. All right, Walker, you're going to go up there. We're going to try to make contact with this guy again, and we'll have you packing a chainsaw and doing all this other stuff, as a tree trimmer. And, all right, sounds good. Let's go up there. And so I get to the house, and I didn't know it at the time, but they had the marijuana grow that was inside the house. They had plumbed into the soffits of the house. And if you know what the soffits are, the eaves that come out, and they have the grates up above. Well, they had the big metal tubing, spring tubing that was hollow, just tubing, and they had it plumbed into the soffits. So it would take the odor from the marijuana grow and pump it outside, which didn't do any good because you could feel, and they had the forced air heater was blowing with it, and so it was pushing warm marijuana smelled air right on top of you as soon as you went to the front door and knocked. So we went to the front door and knocked, and we could tell somebody was there, but nobody was answering. And I could immediately smell marijuana. You know, it was plain as day, and nobody had answered the door, so we went back. Sam went back to the office. We set up surveillance on the house. I called Sheriff Goff. He buzzed over. We set up surveillance on the house. Sam went back, wrote the search warrant. Back in the day, it was kind of funny because now a search warrant might take you for a house 10 minutes, and that's with the prosecutor approving it. We didn't have any, we had no experience writing narcotics. We had no experience, zero, none. It was just hilarious. I was laughing at her. Me and Gerald and Sam were reminiscing about this the other day, and she goes, we had no idea what we were doing. It was hilarious. And so she writes a search warrant. We get a small team together. As we're getting a small team together to ready to raid the house, a car comes buzzing out. And this is if I remember correctly, in January. We catch a car coming out. Sheriff Goff, or one of the patrolmen, instigates a patrol stop on it. Coming out, we get the two guys out of the car. And mind you, there's a foot of snow on the ground. And the two kids get out of the car. They look like kids. I don't remember how old they were. I think they were over 18 though. And they get out and they got grass stains on their pants. Like they just got done bucking hay or mowing the lawn or doing something. And they both get out and I'm like, that's interesting, you got grass. And they both reeked of marijuana. We popped the car. We could smell the marijuana. We popped the car. They got weed in the back trunk. And I can't remember, at that point we decided to hit the house, and like I said, we didn't know anything. We didn't conduct narcotics raids. We didn't know. So it was me, Jerry Martinez, and another guy when we did the raid. And mind you, this is a 4,000 square foot home. We have no idea who's in it. But all right, we'll go raid the house. Yeah, let's go. And we just haphazardly, we didn't do an ops plan. We didn't run it by a SWAT commander. We did it wrong. And we went and raided the house and went on from there. Found once those two guys were taken into custody, we'd hit the house. We found on the couch there was a bunch of bagged marijuana. In the garage, I think there was 50 pounds in a garbage can next to a BMW, a brand new motorcycle. We go downstairs, and inside, and I'll get to there's a hidden room inside the house, but we hadn't got there yet. We go back behind the garage where I believe the hot water heater was. They had their nursery, and I think there was 1,000 plants there, they were only a couple inches tall. And we could once the heater kicked on in the house, we could still smell the marijuana. Like profuse marijuana. Like it wasn't the little baby plants, and it wasn't the 50 pounds in the garage because we'd already taken that and put it somewhere else. And it wasn't the stuff on the couch. It was heavy, musty, if you've ever been in a grow, which I know you have. It's a heavy, musty, growing marijuana smell. We couldn't figure it out. And then I think it was Jerry Martinez looked down at the bottom of the stairs, and they had forgotten to tape and texture one of the seams in the sheetrock. One of the lights from the timer inside the grow room had kicked on and then kicked off and then kicked back on, and we could see the light through the sheetrock. In the crack, we could see the light click, and we're like, oh shit, there's a grow right there. That's where the grow light's coming from. And so we end up cutting the whole wall out, and there was the grow right there. Pretty impressive sight. They had everything all set up, and later we ended up finding out, when we called Idaho Power, we talked to them, and they weren't real cooperative. Idaho Power really never is real cooperative. Their power bill for a 4,000 square foot home was $17. they had plumbed into the Idaho power side of the box. And this was, I can't remember if it was, we extended the search warrant for 10 more days. We immediately, as soon as Sam got there, she left again, we extended it for 10 more days because we had no freaking idea that it was going to be this big. We thought, 5, 10 plants. We didn't know. I mean, we had no idea. We were still pretty fledgling at doing indoor grows. Well, absolutely, we were infants in that. So we extended it for 10 more days. We ended up later getting an electrician in there, and he said, this is absolutely elaborate. I've never seen anything like this. And then after that, we found out the guy that set it up was colorblind. He couldn't read the colors on the wires. When he plumbed into the Idaho power side of the box, he had to have his son sitting over his shoulder telling him, oh, that's black, that's red, that's yellow, that one's green, to plug into the Idaho power side of the box, which we found really funny. But so to go back a little bit, once we're there at the house, we're at the initial stages of processing the house. And once we get there, and I can't remember, while we're at the house, Sheriff Goff and a few other people are there from administration from Twin Falls County, because it turned into a pretty big deal, because there was we'd never seen this much marijuana, specifically in growing form and in processed form. We'd never seen that much, and so it's kind of a cool deal for us. And I believe at that point, Sheriff Goff had called you, I think you were the duty agent on. I don't remember if you were or weren't. We get a phone call into you, and then one of the cell phone rings inside the house while we're at the house, and it ends up being, and he's the primary bad guy in this whole rigmarole of a case. And Sheriff Goff ended up talking to him for a little bit. I don't know why Sheriff Goff was talking to him for a little bit, because no questions were asked and no answers were given. And shortly thereafter that, I can't remember the guy's name that pulls up while we're at the house. It's not. I can't remember the guy's name. Who was the guy that pulled up to the house with his daughter in there, and he was dropping off Christmas presents. I can't remember the guy's name, but he pulled up. We ended up taking him in as well. And forgive me for not remembering all because this case took like 6 years to come to fruition and end. This was one of the longest cases I ever worked. But a guy pulled up to the house. He was the primary owner of the residence, I believe. We end up taking him into custody. He ends up, later in the case, talking. He ends up becoming a state's witness, a cooperator. So we ended up getting the whole house processed. We get everything done on the house. You had come down. You had started the case with us, kind of pointed us in the correct direction to go to. You started the legwork in your investigation into, we had the phone number, we had the names, and we'd kind of started our interviews. By that point, the primary guy, and I should have prefaced this a little bit better, the old man who had set the grow up originally, his two kids were the ones we hit on the traffic stop. I believe his name was. He was the dad to those two kids, and when we hit the house, he ended up running out the back door and running to the canyon edge, because the house was about a quarter mile from the canyon edge, and he ended up crawling off the canyon and hiding out. And by the time we got the ball rolling on it, we had taken him into custody a week later, I guess. We start kicking the case off. You start running it down on, and the guy we'd hit on the traffic stop with the Christmas presents. And the nightmare begins on that case.
What was, just kind of a brief synopsis, but ultimately, what were kind of the tentacles that we ended up locating on that case just from that, 1,000+ marijuana grow? What was the overall organization?
Well, the overall organization, he had numerous people working for him, up to and including his ex-wives, pilots for airlines, run-of-the-mill people in Sun Valley, just basic potheads, people in California, well-to-do people in California. What was that kid's name? Can I say it? I won't say it. A very wealthy individual, and mind you, what I'm talking about was well-to-do. He was wealthy. His dad was an artist, or he has since passed, but yeah, he was well-to-do. He had millions of dollars to begin with. He had money at his access anytime he wanted it or needed. He just needed to call dad. He chose to sling weed and coke on top of that.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you. I mean, the case ultimately didn't just have to do with marijuana.
No, it didn't, and it had to do with up to money laundering. I believe I think he got hit with CCE too, continuing criminal enterprise, distribution, conspiracy to cocaine distribution, conspiracy, marijuana, and it wasn't just your bag of dope. It was hundreds of pounds of it when we ended up catching him. But he was tied into, at one point in time, and I don't remember if he disclosed this or somebody else disclosed it during the interviews. In the town that he lived in, was Fairfield, Idaho, only has 1,500 people in the entire county. It's called the county's Camas, and the city is Fairfield. It's got 200 to 400 people in it, depending on the time of the year. Little teeny ski resort town, not a lot there. He lived there, and he had a little house, and he had a pottery shop. And at one time, he was selling to one of the OMGs, outlaw motorcycle gangs. And at one time, he'd got ripped by him, and he would do all the transactions a half mile away in a hotel from his house. And he got ripped there, and they tied him to a chair, took his dope, took his money, and pretty much kicked the hell out of him and left him there. And I think his wife or his daughter had to go get him from the hotel. But yeah, total case time ended up being 9 years on that case. I think there was 25 to 30 different sources in that case, something like that, somewhere around in there. It branched out into businessmen, just your regular potheads. We bought dope from him bought marijuana from him off the ski resort. I mean, the guy was staying in the ski resort, and we saw him come off the gondola, go down doing marijuana. Hey, good to see you again. He takes off and he goes skiing with his kids. It was like it was his everyday thing. He had houses everywhere. And when I need to preface it, when people say that, I don't know how to say this, and we might want to edit this portion out. When people say that marijuana isn't dangerous or they say it's just marijuana, this case should be shown of, it wasn't just marijuana this guy's moving. He's moving cocaine as well, and he's moving metric tons of marijuana, and he's not paying his taxes. I mean, I think the 1 year he claimed he made $17,000 in 1 year. And when we caught him, I think he had confessed to well over a ton of marijuana. Yeah, and you claim 17,000, and he'd owned all these. I think he owned 8 houses when we hit him. So yeah, when people say it's just marijuana, that's not the case. It's money laundering. He's ruining people's lives with the cocaine and the marijuana that he's moving down the road. But
hey, Derek, when you first started, as a detective and you were doing the narcotics investigation to now, have you seen a change in the type of drugs that are now being distributed and the quantity? What have you seen?
What I've seen is methamphetamine still takes precedence. I think it's still the number one drug, and it has been for years, and for the 20 some odd years I've been working narcotics. It's primarily been marijuana and methamphetamines. Now what we're starting to see is the fentanyls, the synthetic drugs, the fentanyls, the pills, the fake hydros coming over from Mexico that are laced with fentanyl, and it's prescription based.
And how is that affecting, obviously you're in small town Idaho. Are you starting to see overdoses? Are there deaths based on those overdoses? How is it affecting?
Absolutely. We're seeing a large amount of overdoses. I don't have the stats in front of me. I know, and the doctor that used to keep the stats for me, he used to keep stats for me on the overdoses that came into the hospital that were reported to him, so I could report those if we had a grand open or anything like that we could report those overdoses to. And year by year, it is progressively getting out of hand with the overdoses. I bet you I hear of, and this isn't stat driven or anything, I bet you I hear of 3 to 5 overdoses a week just in Gooding County and our neighboring counties. The meds getting pushed to overdose cases.
So, kind of 2 last questions for you. I know in the beginning when you started, you said budget was really hard for you, especially when you started here in Gooding County. What was the change? What was the kind of impetus to all of a sudden you were able to afford a little bit more in terms of training or stop renting cars, stuff like that?
Well, one, Sheriff Goff came in. As far as our general budget went, Sheriff Goff came in and he got stuff squared away, talked to the county commissioners, and the budgets were overall revamped for the sheriff's office. And Sheriff Goff did a really, really good job on getting us some training on that portion of it. As far as our investigative techniques and the equipment we bought with narcotics, because to this day I still don't have a narcotics budget that the county issues me. We only work off of asset forfeitures that started early on, and what actually started with you telling us about some of these programs we didn't know we were eligible for. And the asset forfeiture program really isn't anything new to anybody, but proceeds from narcotics, a drug dealer that has proceeds of the narcotics, and we can prove those proceeds, money, aka U.S. currency, were purchased, were funds from delivery of the substances or received from the delivery of controlled substances, were subject to forfeitures, and we could attach those civilly and take that currency. We would go to, and once you take that U.S. currency, you seize it, you give them notification in court, through the courts that, hey, your money's been seized, you have the right to tell us why the money we seized is not narcotics based. I have to write, as the person who seized it, I have to write an affidavit of why I think, give probable cause and why the money was used or intended to use for narcotics proceeds or receipt and all that other stuff. And then we'd go to trial on that money and it'd go in front of a judge. The federal system has the same thing. And at the beginning we used the federal system asset forfeiture because it was easier. We didn't have to do anything. DEA did all of it for us. But then we learned that program on the state level as well.
So what did you end up doing with the money though? In the beginning you guys were really kind of shorthanded for a budget. Once you started having this money and you got to change with the commissioners and asset forfeiture, what did your department start using the money for?
Well, by statute, the money has to go into a fund, a separate fund, and I think it's the same way on the federal side. I haven't read that, but the AUSA's told us how it had to be done. So the county has 2 different forfeiture funds, one federal, one state. So if I seize the money on the state level, it goes into the state fund. And there are specific things that those funds can be used for. Education, equipment, that is drug related, and training. So that's how we we slowly got the asset forfeiture program for Gooding County up and running, and that's how we were able to afford sending people to training, getting some specialized equipment like a body wire, because we didn't have a body wire in Gooding County. Really, nobody did. We were having to borrow one when we started doing controlled purchases. Vehicles, undercover vehicles for our narcotics teams. We didn't have a way to do that, but because there was no money in the budget, we were trying to outfit our patrol cars. And so we used that asset forfeiture money out of the state and the federal to buy our narcotics, to fund our narcotics team.
So at this point in your career, how long have you been a law enforcement officer?
Roughly 28.
Okay. So can you tell me, if you can remember, from when you started in law enforcement to now, do you think being in law enforcement has affected you in terms of your family life or in terms of how you view society and people in general?
Absolutely, 100%. This job can affect you and will affect you in many ways if you don't process things correctly, if you don't, I don't want to say vent, if you don't, I'm going to say process things correctly. If you try to hold the things in that happen, because you see some very violent things in this job that if you hold in or you don't talk to somebody about it, or you don't, it will absolutely affect you and make you withdraw. And it's happened to me. You can only see so many things without it affecting you. You know, you're out there, say you're a patrolman and you're out there on the interstate and you're taking these crashes, you're picking people's body parts up with a spatula. It's terrible. I mean, you get to see that violence of action that happens on these crashes. You go into these narcotics houses, you're seeing these children, you know, you're seeing ounces of methamphetamines in the room, and there's kids playing right next to it. They all test positive for meth or the marijuana or whatever the case may be. You're seeing these kids that are in these dope houses. So yes, it does affect you, and it does at a certain point, I guess. I can't remember. What did you say about society?
How does it affect your views on society or how you view people?
After 28 years, it makes me withdraw. I don't want to. I withdraw from society as much as I can. I talk to people every single day. The worst of society. Yes, I have my friends outside of law enforcement. I talk to those people all the time religiously. But yes, I do withdraw from society. I don't want to go out and have a general conversation with a guy at Walmart. I don't care anymore. I used to be pretty outgoing, you know, that kind of way. But it will affect you. It will affect your family life because, first and foremost, you're a cop. You're on day shift or night shift. If you're a patrolman, you're on one of those two shifts. We're 24 hours a day. So you've got to shag those calls, and you're going to rotate day shift, night shift. If you're a detective, you catch a homicide, you catch a big case, you're running and gunning, you come to a point that you can't stop because you have something going on with a specific case. You're not going to see your family for an extended period of time sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And then there's the sometimes you don't talk to your family, and your significant other can tell when you're stressed. They know when things are bad at work or you've seen something, you know, you need to find a way to talk to your family. But yes, it does affect you.
And so when you say that you had to figure out ways to deal with that, are you guys, and let's just take Gooding County in particular, are you guys offered any professional help, or is just something that you kind of had to figure out for yourself over time? And if that's the case, what was your solution?
No. The county's been very, very good. Every agency that I know of Gooding County has, it's called EAP Assistance, or Employee Assistance Program. And you get, I can't remember what it is, 4 or 5 free sessions with a counselor. You just call the thing, say, hey, they'll ask you on the phone, hey, what's the problem? Hey, you know, just kind of feeling down, whatever the case may be. I'm having a hard time getting through, getting real emotional, not getting emotional, or I'm not feeling anything, you know, both sides of the spectrum. And they'll schedule an appointment, and they'll ask you do you prefer to be seen by a male or a female? And I don't know if that's exactly what, but I think that's what they ask. But then they'll set you up the appointment. And you go in there, you can extend it, and the county will cover that at a specific rate, and you got to chip in a little bit here and there, but yeah, the county will pick that up for you.
So in terms of Gooding County, and maybe you can speak for some of these other small agencies, is there ever a situation where maybe you see one of your fellow officers and they're down, they're reserved, they're quiet, whatever else? Is there any policies in set where you can go, hey, maybe we should talk with this guy and he should go talk with EAP?
We really can't, well, how do I put this? Yeah, I mean, and it should be just on, it's really not a policy. There is a fit for duty policy, psychologically and physically, those battery of tests can come into play that, say you go into a surgery that you have a knee replacement. We'll put it at that, knee or hip, and you're still on patrol. God, I hope to God you're still not on patrol and having hip surgery, but you got to take a fit for duty. They're going to ask you to take a battery of physical tests to make sure you're fit for duty. As far as the mental end, the psychological end, that is still kind of a touchy subject because it's really hard to go ask somebody, hey, I've done it, hey buddy, you doing all right? What's going on? Or either that or they might be going through a divorce. A family member may have passed. I won't say his name. I have a buddy that he did 8 fatalities in a 12-hour shift. No, in 2 shifts. 8 fatalities with 3 infants on the interstate. And it tipped him over. He couldn't do it. He lost all appetite for this job in any way, shape, or form. And he just couldn't get over it. And so I don't know if he ended up seeking, and this was way back in the day before EAP and before the counseling and stuff, and then the county is very much so has done a good job in progressing. But I know the administration in Gooding County, and even I'll do it, hey, you doing all right? Do you need to see anybody? And we have the EAP stuff on the wall. We'll remind them. We remind everybody if once a year, or I think it's every biannually, hey, EAP's available, guys. If you're having a hard time, give them a call. We don't even, the administration doesn't even know about it. They don't need to know about it. It's none of their damn business. Human Resources knows about it because it's scheduled through them, but other than that, yeah. Pretty easy stuff.
Well, Derek, I appreciate you chatting with me, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a good time.